Good evening, everybody.
Good
evening, Rabbi.
Hi. We're going to start with the Mimer Nigun, as usual, the tune for the Mimer. This is a different rendition this time. Hope you enjoyed as much as I do. This is, again, the Nigun that was sung always before the Rebbe would say a Mimer. They would start with this Nigun, with this tune, and this one is a instrumental one. Represents the yearning of the soul to connect to Hashem. It happens through Chassidus. Before the Mimer, we always sing the song, and many people, before they review a Mimer, they would sing this Nigun. So we recommend you to sing this Nigun. Usually people will close their eyes, sing the Nigun, get you in the mood for the Mimer. Saying about the Mimer was the Mimer Nigun. Before the Rebbe would say a Mimer, everyone would sing this Nigun. During the course of the Nigun, slowly everybody would stand up. Usually people would close their eyes often and sing the Nigun. This is a Nigun also. Whenever anyone would repeat a Mimer, it's very common in Chabad, between Mecha Maariv, especially on Shabbat and at a special event, at a wedding, before the actual chuppah, the chassan says a mimer. At a sheva bracha, the chassan says a mimer. At a bar mitzvah, the boy says a mimer, and many other occasions. So before that, everyone would sing the Nigun. The Nigun kind of gets everybody in the mood of the mimer. The Nigun represents the yearning of the soul. Okay, we're going to go review what we talked about last week briefly. And then we'll continue with the Mimer. Okay, so last week, we talked about the question that Rashi asks. The beginning of the Torah, it talks about creation. Bereshit bara Elokim, that God created the heaven and the earth, and the whole story of creation. And then 1 1.25 books in, the first mitzvah that was given to the Jewish people is stated. When Hashem says to Moshe, tell the Jewish people in the land of Egypt, before they're leaving, the idea of the new moon, that the month, the first month should be the month of Nisan, and that the Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month, should be established by the sighting of the moon. And Rashi asks the question, which is mentioned in the Midrash, why is it that the Torah begins with creation? The Torah should really begin with the first mitzvah, Chodesh Zelachem. This is the month for you, the first month. And Rashi answers that in case someone comes along, he says, because of Koach, Masav, Higid La'ama, Hashem told the people the power of his actions to give them the inheritance of the nations, that if the nation will come along and say, you Jews, you stole the land of Israel, it doesn't belong to you, we'll tell them God created the whole world, and willingly he gave it to those nations, and then willingly he took it away from us, from them, and gave it to us. So we started by discussing the question. What's the question? What's wrong? We're starting the Torah of creation. Why shouldn't we start the Torah of creation? What's the big question? We should start the Torah at the first mitzvah. What's the big question? Start it at creation from the beginning. And we answered the question that this is especially understood by what we studied in Kabbalah and Chassidus, that the world was created by Hashem hiding his light, and there's the light of Hashem that it fills the world, and the light of Hashem that fills the world is limited within the world, it's contained within the world, that is Malchus. But above that, the levels above that are not contained within the world, they're above the world, surround the world, and cannot really be by natural means contained within the world. So when the worlds were created, the light in the world was only the limited light. The mamale, the light that fills the world, that's limited, that is the light. But the light that surrounds the world was not did not come into the world. When we do a mitzvah, the mitzvah, Torah and mitzvahs, the idea, what Torah brings, this new thing, that the Torah brings, that the light of Hashem that surrounds the world also connects with the light of Hashem that fills the world. And therefore, the Torah should really begin from HaChodesh Zelachem, from the first mitzvah, since that is the mitzvah, that is the idea of bringing together the light from above the worlds into the worlds, and that's the whole point of the Torah. So creation is nature, and that's where only the mamale, only the light that fills the world, comes into the world. Torah brings a whole new dimension. So that's where the Torah should start. And that's also what it says, HaChodesh Hazeh, the first words of the mitzvah in Shemot, in the second book, where Hashem tells Moshe, tell the Jewish people, HaChodesh Hazeh, this month, that the word HaChodesh refers to Malchut, which is the level of kingship which creates the worlds. Within the worlds, goes into the worlds. And then Hazeh is revelation. This means divine revelation, which is above the world. And the whole idea of HaChodesh Hazeh, to bring HaChodesh into Malchus, the light of Hashem within the world, to bring Hazeh, the revelation from above, to bring them together. And that's the whole point of the Torah. That's where the Torah should be. That is what we said until now. And I want to ask you if you have any questions or comments or any clarifications needed on that part before we go on with the Mimer.
The hidden light is not the same as the light that fills the world. The hidden light is the light from the Torah, not
there's the light that fills the light that fills the world is also hidden from our sight, but it's not called the hidden light. Correct? It's not called the hidden light because it is in the world and it does affect the world, and it's within the world. The light that is hidden, that is above the world, that is on a different level, that is the light that, so to speak, surrounds the world. And therefore that is something which cannot be accessed by natural means, can only be accessed by Torah. And by mitzvot, we access that light which surrounds the world, which really is not within the world. Okay, I'm going to read the Hebrew again, and translate it into English. If you don't understand the Hebrew, that's fine. Can you see it clearly?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
remember please that I cannot see you at all. I can't see you at all. So please, by all means, feel free to mute yourself and speak. This is not supposed to be a monologue. This is supposed to be a discussion. It's very deep stuff. And sometimes I go on and don't realize that I'm not explaining it properly. So please, by all means, stop me. And we can just. V'hinei inyan hamshachat hasovev. This whole idea of drawing down and bringing down the light of God that surrounds the worlds. And by the way, as I think we talked about last week, surrounding doesn't mean physically surrounding the world. Surrounding means just like something that surrounds, that is not inside. The word surrounding, because we are physical beings, we think of everything in terms of space and time. This is not in space. This is beyond space. So when we talk about surrounding, it means that it's not within, enclosed, involved. It's distant. It's not. It's kind of surrounding. It's not inside it. It cannot be grasped by it, not affected by it. But nevertheless, it gets drawn down. Sha'al yedei Torah o mitzvot, by Torah and mitzvot. So we talked about, let me see if I can share it, and it works better this week. So what did we say? We said that there's the surrounding light. And then there's the light that comes in, the kav, the line of light that comes into the world and creates the worlds. Okay? So now, this light, go back to the mimer. So we talked about, one second, go back to the other one, I'm sorry. Go back to the other one. We talked about the fact that Malchut, the lowest level, becomes the light, creates the next worlds. So the worlds here are created. Each world is created by the Malchut. So let's say these three worlds, Bri, Yetzirah, Asiya, are created by Malchut of Atzilut. And Atzilut itself is created by Malchut of Ein Sof, of the essence of God. So Malchus, but here we're talking about really, let me stop for a second and digress. The world of Atzilut, there are four worlds, and Atzilut itself is called a world. But there's a major difference between the world of Atzilut and the other three worlds. The world of Atzilut, everything is one with God. Everything is united with God. If you notice, the letter of God's name, there's four letters of God's name, Yud, K, Vav, K. The Yud, which represents Atzilut, is like a little dot, because it's not developed. Hey is already developed, wider, broader. The Yud is a little dot, because in Atzilut, everything is one with Hashem. The thing is, though, that Malchut, there's kind of a line, a division between the other Sfirot and Malchut, because Malchut becomes the source of the lower world. So Malchut becomes from the perspective of below Atzilut, in Atzilut itself, Malchut is that which encloses itself within the lower worlds, and the upper Sfirot are beyond. They're like surrounding the world. They're above Malchut. They don't enclose themselves in the world. That is one level of what the Torah accomplishes. The Torah accomplishes that we get the light from these Sfirot also into Malchut. But now we're talking about from the original source of creation. So the original source of creation, you have the infinite light, the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light of God that surrounds all the worlds. And then you have the Tzimtzum, complete hiding of God's light. Let me go for a moment. So remember what we had, the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light of God. And then we had the empty space, which is the Tzimtzum, the complete removal of God's light. And then into that light, into that space, empty space, so to speak, is the ray of light, the Kav. And then we have all the worlds, the four worlds in here. So in its original source, the creation of worlds came about through this Tzimtzum. the light that is above the Tzimtzum cannot penetrate this Tzimtzum. Because this light cannot be contained. It just can't be contained. The only way it can be contained is if there is the Tzimtzum and this little pencil, so to speak, of light. That light can be contained because it goes through the Tzimtzum. But light that is above the Tzimtzum cannot be contained. What we're going to say now in the Maimer is that through Torah and mitzvot, we're able to access this light, that this light should also come into the worlds and go through the Tzimtzum and come into the worlds. Let's go back to the Maimer. So the idea of Hamshachat HaSovev, the bringing down of the surrounding light, Shalidei Torah mitzvot, that comes about through Torah mitzvot, V'shorsho HaRishon, in its original source, Hu Hamshachat or Ein Sof Shelifnei HaTzimtzum. This is the idea of bringing the light of Ein Sof that is before the Tzimtzum should come into the worlds. Okay, the Ita Be, I give 100 points for anyone who can tell me what this is. This is an abbreviation. What is it? I'll give you a hint. It's a Kabbalah book. Anyone? There's a very famous book called Emek HaMelech. What was that?
Zohar.
Nah.
No,
it's called Emek HaMelech. Emek HaMelech. The Zohar is like the source of everything, but the Zohar is much more broad. Emek HaMelech goes into very deep discussions of all this. It's called Emek HaMelech. And the book Emek HaMelech in the beginning, B'tchilato, in the beginning, says the following. The Briat HaOlamot, that the creation of the worlds, Haya, was, Alidei Tzimtzum Harishon, by the first Tzimtzum. This is what we were talking about, what I showed you in that diagram. Shehaya Ba'or Ein Sof, that happened in Or Ein Sof. V'nish'ar Chalal Umakom Panoi, and there was left a hole and an empty space. Umizeh, and from this, Ushoresh, this is the source, Hithavut HaKelim, of the beginning of the vessels, Umetziut HaOlamot, and the existence of worlds. In Yom Maaseh Bereshit, that is the idea of Maaseh Bereshit, of the creation. So again, let's go back to that view. So this is what he says in Emek HaMelech, that the way the world was created was by first in Or Ein Sof, which is infinite light. There was a tzimtzum, removal of God's light, creation of an empty space, and the creation of the empty space gave room and was the beginning of the process of the creation of vessels. Light is light. How do you have, if you think about electricity, I often use the analogy of electricity because it has some ways you can use it as a good analogy. Every analogy is limited. But if you have high-powered electricity, you don't get any benefit from it. As a matter of fact, if you touch it, it destroys you, kills you. How do you get benefit from high-powered electricity? You have to bring it into a light bulb. When you bring it into a light bulb or into an appliance, you get benefit from it. How do you get from the high-powered wires into the light bulb? You have to go through a transformer. The transformer kind of limits and hides. This kind of transformer was even more. This was completely removal of everything to create an empty space. Once you created the empty space, you were then able to have vessels, and into those vessels came the light. And here with the worlds and everything, that was the ability to create vessels. So this is what he says in Emek HaMelech, that this was how, of course this is based on Zohar, but the Zohar doesn't go into this detail. This is what he says, that this is how the world was created. Umashakasuv, it says in the Torah, when Hashem first created man, Adam, Vayanechehu began Eden, and God put up so this was creation before man was created. Vayanecheu began Eden. So first God created the world by creating the ability, the space for worlds, for vessels, and then he took Adam and he put him into Gan Eden, la'avda u'lashamra. It says God put Adam into Gan Eden to work the world, u'lashamra, and to guard the world. What does it mean to work it and to guard it? So this, it says, Shekra'i ala avoda de Torah u'mitzvot. He put Adam in, and then Chava with him to work with him. To do what? To work the world and to guard the world. This is referring to Torah and mitzvot. La'avda, to work it. Ze ramach mitzvot asay, that means the positive mitzvot. That Hashem put Adam there in order to fulfill the positive mitzvahs. That's working the world. U'lashamra, and to guard it, ze shasam mitzvot lo tasay, that's the 365 negative mitzvahs. To work it implies doing something. That's the 248 mitzvot. To guard it means not to do what you're not supposed to do, which is the 365 negative not to do. Why did Hashem put him there to do this Torah or mitzvot? Who? The purpose is lahamshich, in order to draw down tosfot orot, additional lights, al yedei hakav, through the kav, through the line of light, me'or and sof, from the essence of Hashem, shalifnei hatzimtzum, which comes from before the tzimtzum. The worlds themselves are hidden by this, are created by the hiding of Hashem's light. In this space is only the limited light. Hashem so that's the way the world was created. Hashem took Adam and Chava, put them in Gan Eden, in order for them to be able to get the light from up here, from around here, and have it come through the Kav into these worlds. That's the purpose. Now, this is not just a circular thing that keeps on going again and again, the same process, but it's a linear, actually. The world is getting better and better, holier and holier, to the point where this tzimtzum will be filled with this light. So the purpose is to bring Mashiach. When Mashiach comes, there will no longer be the hiding of the light. It'll all be revealed. But you see, the difference is, before, there was only light. Then Hashem created the empty space and then the world. After Mashiach comes and after our work is done through Torah, the worlds themselves will be filled with this light. They're bringing together two opposites. Let me go back to the mimer. So until la'atid, in the future, yeh gilui or Ein Sof, there'll be the revelation of Or Ein Sof b'makom hachalal, in the empty space. Kamo shehaya kodem hatzimtzum, just like it was before the tzimtzum. So that everything will be diffused with light, but the difference will be, it won't be the same as before the tzimtzum, because before the tzimtzum there was nothing but light. Now there'll be worlds, but this space will be filled with the light of God. Okay, so before we go on, someone's asking, is everyone getting this? It's a good question. Is everyone getting this?
I did have a question, Rabbi, if you didn't mind.
Yes, please. I asked you, if you have a question, please stop me. I don't want to just go on and on. I want you to stop me and talk about it.
Please. So you had mentioned Malhut. So I was just wondering if Malhut was the way the light was coming in, following the
Yeah, we talked about this last week a little bit. So Malhut means is the way the light becomes diffused into the world. How does a king rule? How does a king rule? King rules by his words, right? His commands. So Malchut is the word of Hashem that says, let there be light, let there be this, let there be that. This is Hashem's kingship. By the way, the idea of Malchut, if everybody agrees, we can take a few minutes, and let's talk about Malchut. Why is Malchut is the source of the world? It says, there's a verse that we say in Ashrei, Malchutcha Malchut Kol Alamim. Your kingship is the kingship of all the worlds. What does it mean your kingship is the kingship of all the worlds? So the simple meaning is that Hashem is the king in all the worlds. But according to Chassidus, it means so much deeper than that. It means that all the worlds were created by Hashem's Malchut, kingship. Hashem doesn't need worlds. Hashem doesn't need anything. Hashem chose to create worlds because Hashem wanted to be a king. What does it mean Hashem wanted to be a king? So Hashem is there 10 sfirot, that the world, 10 sfirot of the world of Atzilut, and the last one is king. You know how, I remember when we were kids, we would be on the beach, and you'd make a big sand castle, and someone would get up on top of the castle and say, I'm the king of the castle, and they would sing that song, I'm the king of the castle. So it's very easy to be a king of a castle on the beach, but that's not a king, right? A king is someone who has a nation. Without a nation, there's no king. What is the reason? What is so great about a king having a nation? What's so great about a king having a nation is that the nation follows the king. The nation fulfills the king's commands. That is the definition of a king. Kingship. For Hashem to have kingship, Hashem needed to have, he wanted to do it, but once he decided to do it, he needed to have a people, a nation, that have their own minds, that are separate from him, so to speak, and yet follow his will because he's the king. That's the whole thing about Rosh Hashanah. We accept Hashem as our king. We say, Hashem, we're accepting your Torah. We're accepting to fulfill your commandments. You are our king. And the reason for that is because that's the whole point of having a world where people can choose, which means you can perfectly choose the other way. And then whenever we choose to follow Hashem, we are expressing Hashem's kingship in the world. And this way, we're bringing the light of Hashem into the darkness of the world. Because the light of Hashem is hidden in the world through the tzimtzum. First the original tzimtzum, and then the many, many tzimtzumim that come after it, till the light of Hashem is completely hidden. But we choose to serve Hashem. We choose to reveal God's light in the world. That's what we do when we do a mitzvah, which means that we are saying that there is a God by our own choice. It's the people of the country bowing down to the king and saying, we're accepting you. It's not the king himself or his wife or his children. It's the rest of the country. So it's people. So that's why Malchut is the creator, what creates all the worlds. Okay? What we're saying now is, even the source of Malchut and the source of everything everything started with the tzimtzum. The tzimtzum, the creation of an empty space is what created even the possibility of having worlds. Because as long as you have the essential light of God, there can be nothing but the light. Because God is unified, is a simple entity, existence that cannot be divided. If you're going to have worlds of division, you have to hide that light. That's what the tzimtzum did. Our job, so the world was created by the tzimtzum, by the removal of light. The job of the human being through Torah and mitzvot is to bring the light into the world. And when we finish the job, Mashiach will come, the light of Hashem, the essential light of God, the Ein Sof will be within the worlds, it'll be filled, the space will be filled with the light of God. That's what will happen when Mashiach comes. And that's the whole purpose of Torah. So now, if you're going to write a book called the Torah, and you're going to give it to people, and what's the purpose of the Torah? To tell us how to live, to tell us what our purpose is. Where should you start the Torah? Should you start by creation, which happened by the hiding of the light? Or should you start by the mitzvah, which tells you how to bring the light back into the world? That's the whole point of Torah. The whole point of Torah is to bring the light back into the world, yes?
By the mitzvah.
Right. So now we go back to the mimer. Now the mimer explains so much deeper what the question of Rashi. V'zehu, this is what Rashi meant when he said, Lo haya tzarich lahatchil et haTorah, ela me'achodesh hazeh lachem. The Torah should really have begun from this month is to you the first month. Why? Ki sipur ma'aseh Bereshit, because the story of creation, hakol hu achar hatzimtzum, all of it is after the tzimtzum. The whole Bereshit bara Elokim, all of creation, the 10 utterances and the creation of the world and everything, that all is after the Tzimtzum. But that's not the point of Torah, what happens after the Tzimtzum. If there would have been a world with no people, fine. But the whole point of creating Torah, the people and giving them the Torah, Mikivan she'inyana shel hatorahu. What is the whole idea of Torah? Bringing down the light of the essence of Hashem that is above the Tzimtzum. So he should have started the Torah, lo b'maseh bereshit, not with creation, but rather, from this month, the first mitzvah of the months of the month of Nisan and the months going by the moon. Which is the idea of bringing down, drawing down into the world, the light of God that surrounds, which is the word hazeh, this that you're pointing. This is the light of God. This means revelation of God's light, which in its original source, which is bringing down the light of God that is above the tzimtzum. Okay, let's talk about this a little more. Let's discuss it. Let's make sure everyone gets it. Let's make sure that you understand what we're saying here. The question. So before we can answer a question, we first have to understand the question really, really well.
So may I ask a question?
Please.
So doing mitzvah, I cannot say only doing, but doing mitzvah, is it enough to go through this very infinitely thin beam of light which connects our world with Hashem light, right? You're saying doing mitzvah, you can achieve Hashem light from our light, right?
I'm saying that by doing a mitzvah and by studying Torah, we can bring into the world the light that is above nature. That is the light that surrounds the world, that nature stopped. The creation of the world stopped that light, hid that light. We can access that light, which nature doesn't have.
Right. And then using your chart, it means to go somehow to understand or to go through this very thin, I don't know how to call it pencil or very thin beam of light.
In Hebrew, it's called kav, a beam of light, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So and to do it, you do mitzvah, but also you need to understand those sephirot somehow to make sense of it. Right?
Whether you understand it or you don't understand it, when you do a mitzvah, that's what happens.
So you transform yourself by doing mitzvah.
100%. This is the beauty, the thing about Torah. You know, in general, when you're going to do something, you want to know how to do it first. With Torah, when you try to study Torah and understand Torah, you've got to be practicing it while you're learning it. Because the practice of the mitzvah transforms you, and then you're more open spiritually to receive the light of Torah. And they both go together, but you have to learn Torah so you understand what you're doing and bring meaning to it, otherwise it's meaningless. But even if it's the action of the mitzvah transforms you because you're bringing to yourself the light of God that is infinite. By the way, one of the things that the Rebbe said about the power of doing a single mitzvah, remember that the Rebbe transformed the world with his campaign of getting every Jew to do a mitzvah. And people, the whole Orthodox world, the entire Orthodox world, non-Chabad, was against this idea. They're not religious, who cares? They do a mitzvah, put on tefillin, they're never going to see the tefillin again. And the Rebbe pointed out what it says in Chassidus, that when you do a mitzvah, you're connecting to the essential light of God that is beyond time. So in other words, the power of that mitzvah is eternal, because it's not limited to the nature of the world. It's connecting with Ein Sof, which has no time. So it's infinite, and it transforms a person completely, infinitely, even one mitzvah. So even if a person, there was the Rebbe's view of this. It was a very powerful thing. When I was a student, I went to help a friend of mine who started a Chabad house in Des Moines, Iowa. That was in those days, that was such an outpost, my goodness, Des Moines, Iowa. So they started a Chabad house there, and there was a school called Drake University and another university there. And the students used to come. And whenever the students, he always had a table full of food. Whenever the students come, he would have them sit down, he would stuff them with food. And he told me that the Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Chadakov, told him, the Rebbe's assistant, told him, he said, when the students come to you, stuff them with kosher food, because every bite of kosher food they eat is one bite less of non-kosher food. Think of that. Who would think that way? So they don't eat kosher anyway, so they don't keep kosher. Who cares? No, the Rebbe cared about every bite, because every bite of kosher food is a bite less of non-kosher. That's already a mitzvah. Not to eat a bite of non-kosher food is a mitzvah, and it connects you with the eternal. That's what we're saying. It connects with the eternal. Whoever it is who just asked that question, can you please ask the question out loud?
Sure. Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
So when we do a mitzvah, kingship / malhut is brought down through all the 4 worlds. And we make Hashem a home in the last world, Asiya, which is where we're at. That's my question, 1. And then the other question would be, where do the other Sephirot come into play, as it were, Rabbi? Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to answer that on 2 levels. One of the things about Chassidus, we're getting into layers and layers here, and I'm going to ask everybody to bear with me if this is a little heavy because you're not used to this kind of thinking. Bear with me because it's beautiful stuff. I mean, I understand it's sometimes a little hard to understand. Layers and layers. There is the layer of the worlds themselves. Malchut is the source of the actual, so the final source of creation of the world. When you do a mitzvah, you are suffusing Malchut and everything that's in the world with the light from above Malchut. So you're bringing a new light into Malchut more than the natural light of Malchut. It's not that you're bringing Malchut, but it's more than that. You're actually bringing the light from above Malchut into Malchut and into all the world. That is on the level, so on the level of Asiya, Asiya is created by Malchut of Yetzirah. So you're bringing into the Malchut of Asiya, which creates Asiya, Malchut of Yetzirah, which creates Asiya, the upper Sfirot of the world of Yetzirah, which then in turn brings from above, and it goes all the way up to Atzilut. But what the Rebbe said in this mimer, and I don't know if you noticed it, the Rebbe talked about 2 layers. The higher layer is more than that. Into Malchut of Asiya, into this world, we are bringing the essence that goes even beyond all the Sfirot and all the worlds. We're bringing the essence of Ein Sof into this world of Asiya. But you know what? When it comes to this world of Asiya, it goes through all the worlds. So you're basically creating a new light through all the worlds and lifting all the worlds. It says in the mimer that the previous Rebbe wrote just before he passed away, that we consider it to be his will and testament, and he wrote there that when a person is skafi, when a person subdues his evil inclination and refuses to do something that he's not allowed to do, or does something that he has to do even if he doesn't want to, this brings the light of Ein Sof, the essence of God, into all the worlds. Our action, little me, impacts every single world, every single sphere, even the world of Atzilut. You know why? Because Bereshit means that God created the world for the purpose of the Jewish people to observe the Torah. So we are fulfilling the purpose of everything when we do a mitzvah. And therefore, that is bringing the light of Hashem, of Ein Sof. Ein Sof created the Tzimtzum in order to create the worlds that we should do mitzvah. So when we do a mitzvah, we're bringing the light of Ein Sof into all the worlds. Did I answer your question?
That was really beautiful. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Do we have it? All right. Yes.
I'm thinking, Laura, we talked about Malkut, and to go through this path, also every Sefirah should play its role. So when we do that, somehow we need to think at a certain point about all other Sefirot.
Yes, but let me give you a practical example. In a human being, remember that we are created in the image of God, which means that the 10 Sfirot of the divine Sfirot that Hashem created, the world of Atzilut, those are the 10 representations of Hashem's light. The human being is created in the same way. And therefore, we talk about human nature and human activity. From this, we can understand how Hashem works, so to speak. There's you and me. I have feelings, I have thoughts, I have emotions, many, many things. You don't know any of that. If I want you to do something, and I think all day that I want you to do it, you're never going to do it. You're never going to get it. One of the biggest complaints between husbands and wives, why didn't you know that that's what I wanted, right? Why didn't you tell me? What do you mean? You're supposed to know, right? So until you speak or until you do an action that shows what's going on in your mind, in your heart, nobody else knows. How do other people know it? Only when you speak, right? Now, so I speak to you and I ask you to do something for me and you do it for me. That creates a connection between us, right? Because you've done it, what I've asked you to do. Now, in the course of conversation, if you say something to me or if you ask me a question, let's say, and I get excited, you begin to see in my conversation, you begin to see my emotions, my thoughts come into my speech. I could talk to you very dispassionately, right? But if you, let's say you do something that really makes me feel good, I'm going to say thank you to you. You know, if you do something for me, I'll say thank you. But if you do something that really, really I appreciate, and especially if it's something difficult for you to do, my thank you is going to be much greater because in my words is going to come all my emotions. And I'm going to tell you how I think about you and how wonderful it is. And thank you so much. The words become much more meaningful. What happened? My emotions became revealed in my words. Words have no feeling. Words themselves have no feeling. I can sit here and say, you're the most wonderful person in the world. Or I can sit here and say, you're the most wicked person in the world. No emotion at all, no feeling. I could even speak without thinking. How many people do that? But when we infuse them with feeling and meaning, then the words reveal my feeling. So what I'm saying is Hashem created the world through malchut, through words. But his light, his emotions, his sfirot, besides malchut, are not revealed in the world. When we do a mitzvah, then we bring Hashem's emotions in. We bring chesed, we bring gvura, we bring all the sefirot to be revealed in the world. But what we're saying is not only that, but the will of Hashem is revealed. The ultimate will, even the essence of Hashem is revealed by doing a mitzvah. So that's what we're saying, that we go way beyond malchut when we do a mitzvah.
So Rabbi, how does this relate to elevating sparks? By that I mean, I've read that, you know, when we've collected all the sparks in the world, Mashiach will come. So how does this relate, please?
Yeah, just give me a second. I want to just check something out. That is going to be the next section, section 3.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So actually we go into the whole idea of sparks and tohu and we go into a whole new level of understanding of what the sparks are and what the world of tohu, the world of confusion, and the world of tikkun. And it's a beautiful thing. We'll get into that. Bezrat Hashem. I don't think we should start this week. I think we should leave it for next week, unless actually we can get started on it and see where we go, unless anyone has any other questions or any other discussion.
Yeah, I have a question. So I understand this chart of Ein Sof and Tzimtzum and Kav. And what are the other worlds for? Are those the worlds that he created and rejected? Or
the worlds that he created and rejected is before all of it.
Oh.
4 worlds, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiyah. So very briefly, if I can explain it like this. Imagine if you have an extremely powerful light. Think about electricity even, right? We've got the generator of electricity, and then you have from the generators of electricity, you have an incredible amount of electricity, you contain it into a high-powered wire. The high-powered wire, then you have a transformer, and then you have in your house another transformer, and then you have, when you plug it in, the light becomes further, till you have only low voltage, right?
Right. So step down.
So each of the worlds is a step down, right?
Yeah.
A major step down.
Got it.
Right. We talked about veils. That's correct. We talked about veils last week. That everyone is another veil, another symptom. It begins with the first symptom, which is total removal of light. Then comes the defined light, and that light becomes hidden more and more. So in the world of Atzilut, it's all unified, and there's no evil at all. In the world of Bria, it is mostly good, holiness, and some beginning of definition of evil. Then you have the world of Yetzirah, where it's half and half. Then you have the world of Asiya, where it's a majority evil, where Hashem's light is hidden. And then you have the physical Asiya, where we are, where God's light is not revealed at all. Any other questions or comments?
So I keep thinking, what are the not the definition, but the translation of the names? Atzilat, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya.
That's a very good question. I'm very happy to answer that.
And do each of them have 10 Sephirot?
Right. Each of them has 10 Sephirot, but each of them, it's the same concepts, but in a different level. The word Atzilut has a couple of meanings. Atzilut means emanation. It's interesting that in English, it's hard to find the right word for Atzilut. It's called the world of emanation, which means that there is a flow of God's light, but it's not yet called creation. The definition of creation, Bria, creation means something from nothing, which means that something created has no direct connection to its creator, doesn't know its creator, doesn't recognize its creator, and it's a completely new creation that is outside of its creator. The world of Atzilut is already emanation, that you already have 10 Sefirot, but the world Atzilut also means the word Eitzel. You know what Eitzel means in Hebrew? Eitzel means next to.
Next to.
So it's an emanation of God's light, but it's still next to Hashem, so to speak. It's still, at that point, everything is still very close to godliness. Then comes Bria, which means creation, where you have this break, so to speak, where you begin to have 10 individual Sefirot, separate, feel themselves as something separate from Hashem. They feel their existence. Imagine if you have a finger. You don't feel your finger. If you feel your finger, you got a problem. If the finger's telling you, I'm here, then there's something wrong with your finger, right? So Bria means already that it feels itself already. It's an existence, a created existence. Yetzirah means formation, where it's formed much more defined. And then comes Asiya, which means action. And that's this world where there's already action. Action is something which is outside of yourself completely. When you're doing something, it's what you're impacting. It's not you, it's you're doing something. Doing something outside of yourself. That is the world of Asiya. So that's the meaning of these four worlds. In each of these worlds, there is the process. So if you take each world on its own, you have the process of Chachma, which means coming up with new ideas, Bina, which means developing those ideas, Dat means connection to those ideas, then comes Chesed, which means kindness, love, giving. Gevura is a very intense light, which has to be measured and hidden, otherwise it can't be revealed. Tiferes is a mixture of Chesed and Gevura, the perfect balance between giving and withholding, between kindness and judgment. It's called mercy. And then comes Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Each of those is another manifestation of the attributes. And then comes Malchus, which is the speech which carries it over to the next world. Each world has those things within its own system. Each one is a system, a full system of 10 Sefirot. And each system, though, is completely different from the one above it, because each system is further away, but each one is a complete system. So you have the same system. Imagine if you have a computer, so you can have a supercomputer that does billions of computations a second, and then you have a child's computer which plays a game, or you have a game computer. They're both computers, they both have the same processors, but one is completely, you can't even compare one to the other, but they're both, because they both have the process. So each of the worlds is a process, And each of the worlds, at the end of the process, communicates, creates a new world. Malchut creates a new world, which is a new process that starts again. So the end of one world becomes the beginning of the next world, and the process begins again 4 times. And the human being is a microcosm of that process. We also have that process. And our malchut is when we speak, when we create, when we do in the world. That's our malchut, outside of ourselves.
Rabbi, could you please expand when you mentioned that there is evil somewhere on those 3 worlds, Berea, Yetzirah, and Asiya?
Okay, so it's too complicated. It's too complicated to go into at length now. But I can just say that the evil in Bria is not real evil, it's the potential for evil. Potential for evil. And the different levels. There are creation but there are also negative angels, negative forces. Those negative forces begin to have a potential in Bria. And then they become more developed in Yetzirah. In the world of Asiya, you have spiritual demonic beings. You have the good and the evil. You have an angel called Satan. The Satan is one of the angels that its job is to prosecute and to cause mayhem. That's his job. And to give us choices that begins in Bria and then comes down to Yetzirah and Asiya, where it becomes the evil inclination within each of us.
So the reason there is this kind of evil attributes on this level, not on the level of Exodus, because of free choice. So in
order to give free, yes, it's all there for free choice. And why is free choice there? Because Hashem should be a king, meaning that people, so to speak, outside of him should choose him, not that he's imposed, because otherwise he's a dictator. God didn't want to be a communist dictator. God wanted to be a king, a real king, accepted by the people, right? Okay, now I'm going to wrap up, and I'm going to, if you don't mind, a commercial message while I'm wrapping up. Where is it? Just a sec. I want to just say that next week, I am most probably next week going to be out of town. So, and probably not able to give this class. So I'm going to ask you to please check your, check the, 1 second. Let me get back to here. Please check the emails and stuff, because probably there will not be a class unless I let you know otherwise. That's number 1. Number 2, so I just want to kind of summarize where we're up to. We're up to the question of Rashi. When you read the Rashi, the question says, simple question, why didn't it start with the first mitzvah? But now that we've learned this Maimar, we understand the question so much deeper. Because the question is, the purpose of Torah is to bring the light of Hashem into the world, the light of essence into the world, or Ein Sof into the world that is above the world. That's the purpose of Torah and mitzvot, which is beyond creation, because the light that's in creation is only the light that fills the world. So if the Torah is teaching us what Torah is all about, it should start with, the Torah should start with the new thing that Torah is bringing, which is the bringing down of the light of Hashem. So what we're going to learn, the answer is that there's something even greater than bringing the light of Ein Sof into the world. If you can imagine it. Bringing the essence of Hashem, the light of the essence of God, or Ein Sof, into the world, so that the world should be filled and suffused with the light of Ein Sof, as it was before the Tzimtzum, is not enough. Bereshit is even greater. And that's what we're going to learn next time, Bezrat Hashem, how Bereshit is even greater than the concept of Torah and Mitzvot, of bringing the light of Ein Sof into the worlds.
That's one. The last question, is it part of Kabbalah or is it part of Hasidus, what Hasidim brought, kind of?
So Hasidus explains Kabbalah. Hasidus is the soul of Torah. So the Kabbalah talks about the Sfirot and how everything's creation. But Chassidus teaches us how the observance of Torah and mitzvot brings the light of Ein Sof. But more than that, the Chassidus teaches us how Bereshit is greater. That's the way Chassidus explains it. Chassidus shines a light on many of the things. Kabbalah gives, like I said last time, I've heard one explanation. The Kabbalah is the map of the worlds, and Chassidut tells you how to navigate it. Also, Chassidut gives you the purpose of it. So this is all Chassidut taking the Kabbalistic concepts and bringing it down to a level that really is meaningful to each of us. Once we finish this mimer, you'll never do a mitzvah the same again. When you do a mitzvah, you'll feel it'll lift you up to such high spiritual heights just by doing a mitzvah once you finish this mimer. I just want to mention also that after we're done with this mimer, I think the next mimer we're going to do is going to be all about Hanukkah, a much deeper look at the light of Hanukkah. The Rebbe has, the Rebbeim, all the Rebbeim, Hanukkah, again, will never be the same Hanukkah after you learn this mimer about Hanukkah. All right, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I can't
Yes.
believe we have to wait 1 or 2 weeks to find out something that's bigger than bringing the Sovev light in. What could be bigger than that?
You'll find out. Well, the answer is actually the essence of God's will is greater than the light. There's the light and the essence, and the essence is even greater.
Oh,
We're going to talk about that. This idea of essence that is greater.
right.
And by the way, as along the journey, we're going to talk about the sparks. We're going to talk about Tohu, the worlds that fell apart, the 7 kings. You know, if you read the Torah tells us that the Edom, the nation of Edom, had 7 kings and gives us the names of all the kings before the Jewish people had kings. Who cares? Why do we care about? It doesn't tell us about all the history of all the other nations. The 7 kings of Edom. We're going to learn that those 7 kings of Edom are actually 7 levels of Tohu. These are the worlds of Tohu that come before. Every word of Torah has so many layers of meaning. It's so unbelievable. When you study Chassidus, it just opens up a whole new world. So Bezrat Hashem next time. Next week or the week after, probably the week after.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, Eddie.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thanks so much, Rabbi.
Thank you, everyone.
Pleasure. Thank you. And I'm going to ask you all next time. I'd love to see you right from the beginning. All right. Take care.
Okay, good.
Shabbat